Before we begin, I just wanted to say that Joe and Tammy De La Cruz have been struck by a tragedy that no parent should ever have to face. In the wake of the murder of their son, Joey Gingerella, who was trying to protect a domestic violence victim, the Groton Town Council would like to have a moment of silence to remember Joseph's life and to also pay respect to the work he and his parents have done to save the lives of others. Thank you. And it should be noted, it was just reported a little bit earlier that the police had captured the suspect.
Oh, thank God.
So, some good work done there. Calendar and communications. Anybody have any calendar and/or communications? No? Okay. Approval of the minutes. Someone like to move the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion to move the minutes by Councilor Barber, a second by Councilor Antibas. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? That passes 7-0 to 0. Is there any unfinished business? Always. Okay, we'll move on to new business. First item, 2016-0011, meeting with state legislatures, and we have Heather Bond Summers and Chris Connolly here with us. So we can all, should we come down to the table or stay up here? Or?
You may, well, it's televised, so you won't have microphones down.
Okay, so we'll stay here.
Down. It's the same level.
Yeah, I got you. So we'll stay where we are, and we want to thank you guys for coming. And I think you did. Did you guys receive anything from a list of topics?
I received nothing.
No, I have not.
Okay.
But, basically, I'm here, I'm sure Christine is here too, and I want to speak for her too. Hear what you are interested in this legislative session. We can give you kind of an update as far as what we know, but we're really here to hear your concerns, legislation that you're interested in having submitted or passed, either specifically to Groton or in general. So that's why we're here to listen, and obviously we want to make sure that you know that you can, all of you can reach out to us at any time. I know that Mark knows that also.
Yeah.
If you have questions or concerns, and we have the ability to put in bills that are somewhat like placeholders in a generic sense, just to get something in, and then we can fill in the details later. So if there's something that is of particular interest to the council, we can get that submitted. I already have submitted a few bills that I can at least share with you some of the things that we're doing, but we're here to listen.
Great. Well, again, thank you guys for coming. I'll open up to the councilors. To Greg.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I think probably foremost would be the school initiative. As you all are aware, that the bond passed, so that now the hard task work is in front of us to get the funding from the state and to push for the best reimbursement rates that we can for our region. And I think it's important to promote the fact that the Southeast Connecticut with EB growing over the next 5 years, that that all is important, and if we're going to put money into Connecticut, this is a great place to sink it, starting with the schools, I think. And I know you had to put in a couple bills to get that rolling, and I just wanted to know where you guys were at with that.
I can tell you that there's two different issues. There's a diversity grant that needs to be approved, and that is really something that's based on what the Board of Education submits, not legislative work. And that happens to be if we fit the criteria for the diversity grant, then we will be qualified for the additional funding.
Right.
The second part is the waiver that's required for the overage on the square footage. I have submitted a bill that's being drafted right now for that particular waiver. And the argument I think we have is solid. You're going from, there's many different facets. One of those is obviously what you just mentioned, but also you're going from a middle school to an elementary school, so the cost is higher than a typical elementary school. The halls are wider, the gymnasium is bigger, the ceilings are taller. There's all those things that go into that. So They understand that it's a priority, and Christine and myself and Mark and a few other people on the task force are going to be meeting with some folks from the DAS this Thursday. I'm losing track of the days, to talk about the specific language that is required so that we get the language correct in the bill. What we're seeing, and I'm sure you're seeing the same thing, is because we have major budget issues in the state of Connecticut. If something gets put on school bonding, it will get passed with all of the other school bonding. But the question is, will there be school bonding because of the financial situation? So that is still yet to be determined at this point. But that's what we can tell you. And I've, all of us will be working with the different departments that will have to go through the waiver process. And it is comforting to know that this is not the first time this has happened, and this happens often for different reasons. There's been different schools that have gone over that for the fact they have to clean up a site, or that there's heavy asbestos in the school. So this would not be precedent setting. It has been done before.
Every community has unique needs, and ours are what they are to get the waiver. So we'll be presenting that
Right.
case.
I think we've talked about doing some things at risk as far as architectural planning and stuff, so whatever feedback you guys can provide us, I think will be important for things that we want to spend money on up front.
Yeah, we certainly can, once the bill is actually, it's drafted now, but once it's actually in the system, we can show you how to track it right online, and you can see where it is and what committees it's in and what kind of results you get, so on and so forth.
Any member of the public has the same access that we would have for tracking, so it is something easy to know when things are going before committee and when it gets a new number and where it sits.
Do you think it would...
Or you can call us.
Yeah,
Right.
and we'd be happy to do it for you.
Do you think it would help to have any local leaders, like...
There's two ways to go through a bill, and I don't want to belabor everybody with the boring how it
Right.
goes through, but you can either go through and you can have it as a standalone bill, and then you can call for a public hearing, which is something that we would then ask you all to come and argue it, or you can be creative about how you tag it onto something else, and you don't need a public hearing. So
Right.
that's something that we're looking at doing it two different ways to see the best result that we can get for Groton.
Thanks.
Sometimes the public hearing is not what you want.
Right.
Sometimes it is, depending on what the issue is. So,
But we'll let you know, even if it's tacked on, things do sometimes go before committee members and other members of the House and Senate. We'll let you know when we'd like you to call people, and because when it's voted on, we certainly would like the most voices to support it.
Right.
yeah, and if there is a public hearing, clearly we would provide you enough time that you could certainly come, or you could provide written testimony to put into the record.
So,
All right, Harry.
Okay, so we actually, I was under the impression we actually need legislation for the racial imbalance to get the 80 versus 57% reimbursement. I think that's the numbers. You don't
don't.
need legislation, so we need the
You need to fit
Get-
the criteria.
well,
for-
that's done. I mean, I think that
Well,
is getting done by.
That has
by the
not yet
superintendent.
been formally done. We are out of, our numbers show that we are out of balance.
Yeah,
But
I
there
know
is a
that we are.
process where it's approved that we're out of
And it
balance.
won't be till May, I think, before that.
Yeah, those are the
happens.
numbers in October or something.
Right, based on
They
the
come out.
October numbers.
And as far as the reimbursement for the square footage from $450 a square foot or something like that.
That's what you need
that-
legislation.
That you need legislation for.
Correct.
So, I mean, the key to all this stuff is communication. I mean, I'm so happy, and congratulations to both of you. I
Oh,
didn't say
thank
that,
you.
I should have
Thank you.
started out. This is a great beginning, it really is. I think we're all on board to get this done. And don't forget the Navy as being a big part of our
Right.
town. We're a military community, we're the only one in the state.
Right. And actually, I can tell you that I've met with some of the largest employers that we have here in Groton, just in Groton, for example. I was at Pfizer yesterday. And one of the things that they repeatedly said is that when they're solid, they have 3,000 people, and when they bring new people in, they've actually created a special, social network between new folks from Electric Boat and Pfizer, and actually Dominion has joined. And one of the things they are really focusing on having their new hires put down roots and, you know, buy homes and become part of the community. And they're working with the chamber to, I guess, expose some of the newer people here, some of the things that you can get involved with, because New England sometimes is not the most
A lot of stuff's
friendly
hidden.
place to be a new person. But one of the things they talked about was that, you know, right now they are faced with the choice many times between a Groton school system or a New London school system. And they were very encouraged by the fact that our referendum just passed, because they felt that that would really help them be able to secure people to want to put roots down in our community. Because in the previous to that, it was more difficult. They were looking at other communities to put roots down. So that was encouraging also. So I think we would even be able to get some of that type of support to help push this through also.
Just on that note, should we be providing the school system information to these folks so they know what we actually are planning to do? I don't know how much detail they know on the school projects.
Are you talking about the businesses?
Yes.
I think they were briefed. I think the, and Mark can correct me, but I think our school, the school PAC, I think they went to the business
Right.
community, but I don't, you know, I don't know
Right.
if everybody participated or not. But they were encouraged
Sure.
in our conversations that it had passed.
We do have a few items listed to
Okay.
go forward. So the ECS funding, is that, I mean, there rhyme or reason to it? Is there going to be?
That's definitely up for discussion.
Okay,
Yeah.
very good.
Bruce, if I
Yeah.
could, on the ECIT last year, as both of you may recall,
You got cut.
Groton was
Got a
slated
substantial
for a
cut.
pretty big hit,
Yes.
around $4 million. And ultimately, I think it ended up being around $1 million. But the sense that I think we had was that decision was just being pushed down the road at some point. So I'm very concerned about that. I mean, it looked as if, in some people's minds, Groton's been overcompensated over the years.
I think partly that was like an education for many of the folks that are up there. You know, I will tell you that the folks that I've talked to, which is a lot, they don't understand the whole military base. They don't understand, you know, the non-taxable portions of our community and the impact aid. And when you start talking to them about the details, they say, oh, because really Groton should be treated not as a town, but really as almost like a mini city with all the pilot that we have, and it changes the conversation. There's a lot of focus on not changing the ECS formula so that no one will get any less than they got the year before. I obviously we can't guarantee that that's going to be the case, but I think this is probably one of the first times, because of the makeup of the legislature that's changed, that you might see the possibility of some definite structural changes. We're talking about structural changes in the committee levels. You know, there is some talk of combining to delete commissioners, combining certain organizations. So I think that pretty much everyone that I've talked to who is representing a school district does not want to see municipal aid or ECS formula cut. I mean, they understand what the impact is. We just have to figure out how to make that happen. And obviously right now there's no guarantees on anything because of the budget situation.
Yeah, I believe every legislature will be fighting for municipal aid to remain the same. Everyone does want more, but I think we understand that that's possibly not the best fight to do at this point, to be more on the defensive. And that's every municipality. So if all voices are together in the House and the Senate on that issue, it does bode well for ECS funding. You know, municipal ECS funding, hospital funding, those are kind of a basic item that everyone is on the same page for.
Okay.
Yeah, we do have to balance this budget, so there will be discussions.
I think, Senator, you made the point a couple of years ago that we spend a lot of money in education and then we don't seem to retain it as a state, the people that we've just spent a lot of money educating. And so probably the best thing you two can do, and your colleagues, is to make sure that Connecticut is a place where people, after we spend all this money, the people actually stay, and we get the benefit of their education. Do you think, I don't know whether you've had a chance to peruse the rather interesting decision from Judge McCousher earlier this year regarding education funding, whether you think that represents a monkey wrench in the works?
That's with our state Supreme Court right now.
It is. It's still
So
there.
I would, I would not comment on it until, because as you and I and many well know, that the state Supreme Court can end up with a completely different decision than what Judge McAllister spent a lot of time with, over, I believe, almost several hundred, possibly 1,000 factual findings in his opinion. So there's a lot there, and the Supreme Court may do an awful lot to it. When the Supreme Court does hand out their decision, not to speak for Heather, but I'm sure both of us and Joe will be there to make sure that we get the biggest piece of the pie that we can for the town. But it could impact a lot. It could impact a little, depending on what the court does with that decision.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Chris, a couple of weeks ago, we spoke about the Easy Pass tolls. Has anything materialized on that? I know Connecticut is losing a tremendous amount of money from these trucks and cars going up and down the highway. Right now, it costs something like $50 to go down to Washington, D.C., and Connecticut is one of the free states that doesn't have a toll. And I think we're losing a lot of revenue, and I'd like to see at least something be introduced.
Yeah, I'm in support of the tolls. I know several people are. I know people who were against the tolls in the House. I only speak about the House. Last year, some folks are not going to be rejoining us who were against the tolls. But Massachusetts, right, our neighbor to the north, just switched over to all Easy Pass tolls. So we have an excellent example of how things are working. There are ways, and Massachusetts is a good example, where residents get tax reductions based on the tolls that they paid, which does offset the burden for those of us who are paying, who are living here and driving on the roads. There are ways to turn the tolls off on certain times of day, if it's the morning rush or the afternoon rush, that make things easier for residents, where you are legally taxing more folks who are driving through. And there's ways to kind of have, if you want to do a holiday weekend special where you turn off the tolls or you don't turn off the tolls. So I'm in support of that. I know there is a bill in the House side that's going for the Transportation Committee on that. Assuming the Transportation Committee stays as it is, we'll know who the chair is, but all things until the next couple weeks regarding chairs of committee and House committee assignments are up in the air at this point. So if I'm on it, I will be working hard for that. If I'm on a different committee, I'll still be working on that issue.
Thank you.
Councilor Morton?
Yes, do you see any movement in the coming legislature on the MBR?
I know that's a bill that's been put in, but I don't know whether that will get any traction.
Okay.
But that's, there's certain bills that are put in every year by, I would say, the Republican side. The minimum budget, binding arbitration always is put in, prevailing wage is always put in, revoking the business entity tax has always been put in. Obviously, in years past, in the minority, it doesn't go anywhere. I'm not sure if it will go anywhere this year, but those are standalone bills that are consistently put in every year.
Go ahead.
Congratulations to you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to just see the tourism money also come from the state to our area. I think we're the best kept secret in Connecticut, and we have so much to offer. And I don't think a lot of people, even in the northern part of the state, know what we have to offer. So I would like to see more tourism dollars come our way.
Thank you.
Can I just comment? Yeah. I just drove through Massachusetts, and I was amazed at all the toll booths. It said toll booths are being deconstructed, and the signs and everything. And I'm guessing if I didn't have my Easy Pass with me, I'd probably get something in the mail
Yeah, you
with
do.
my license plate picture on it, telling me that I have to pay a toll. So
You get a slightly
the
reduced rate on
technology is
Easy
amazing. It's
Pass.
a great example just to our north. It really is. You drive, and I notice the things now when you drive under them, cameras or whatever they are. So I just wanted to say that.
You will get an envelope.
One item I'd like to see if you guys could help with is the issue that we had with the Heritage Trust Fund and GOSA, and our desire to not have a property, be open space, and express that it's not as much that it was ultimately made open space, because I think that could be debated. It was that the state directly went against and didn't communicate with us that they were going against what our desire was, and they're using taxpayer money to do it. So it seemed like there should be something put in. I know, Heather, we talked about it. and you had said you were working on something, so.
Working on that. One of the things, there's a constitutional amendment right now that's been, it went through, last time it's being talked about where if there is land that is owned by the state, you probably know this, or it's state-owned. At the end of the session, years ago, legislators would, grab this piece of land for their town or that piece of land, and it was sort of snuck in the implementer. And there was this big issue in East Haddam over that. And so there's a proposal for a constitutional amendment that says if the state is going to come, I'm sorry, if a town is trying to get state land back, then it takes I think a supermajority of the House has to vote on it and the Senate to make that happen. It'll be standalone, so legislators just can't grab land any longer for their town. On the flip side of that, I would like to look at, and I talked to them today about it, an amendment to that bill that would say on the reverse side, if the state comes into a town and wants to purchase land that is not on the plan of conservation and development, that is developable land, that has access to sewer and water, before they can take the land, whether by DEP or some other method, that the town has to be notified and there should be a public hearing. This has happened to Groton now twice, where previously there was land that the town was trying to maybe develop, I think it was 70 acres along the Mystic River, and it was kind of snuck in at the last minute and transferred over to DEP without anybody in the town knowing. So I think the town deserves to have the right to know what's going on and at least have a public hearing on it.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're negotiating that right now.
Thank you.
So.
Along that same vein, John Scott was doing some work with some of the state-owned land around the Mystic Oral School, and I think that plays into that bill you were talking about. And the town is trying to market that property. So anything you could do to help us market the property and potentially gain some of those parcels back so that, we can make that a better place to sell. I don't know if we've had any traction on anything with showing that property, but it sounds like there's a lot of property around it that if we got that back would make it
Yeah, I think the issue there is while the land that has been given to deep, they actually haven't been broken off. I guess they have interest in a certain amount of acreage. And it may be great open space, but it's always seemed to us, I think, that, geez, it'd be good to have a plan for reuse for the property before you start breaking pieces off of it. And we are, as I think you're both aware, we are working with ECD in obtaining a $50,000 grant to help market it, market the property. We've had a number of inquiries in the last couple of months with potentially folks that are interested in it.
Yeah, it's a beautiful spot, and I'm sure there's something that we can find that is both good to the community and the neighbors, and of course to the tax base, which is others' concerns. That works out.
There was also and Councilor Morton, I think you brought this up a year or so ago, that isn't there something in the legislation that was passed that says if we go more than 2% higher, is that going to be looked at? Because the state can't cut revenue to a town and then hold us accountable to raising taxes to keep the services. Not that we're going to, but it just seems completely backwards when they're having issues themselves.
I think that's definitely something that's looked at. Many of the folks are saying, look, the state can't do that themselves, and now they're requiring, towns to do that also. So I know that's a bill that's going to be put in.
That is definitely going to be put in.
Yeah, just small comment. It just seems fundamentally unfair that we periodically go through this process where we spend a lot of money and quite a lot of time per state requirement to adopt a POCD, and then the state says, well, that's very nice, and then we declare this to be open space in collaboration with a private organization, which may be wonderful, but gee, we wish you told us that ahead of time. So, but small things sometimes.
We were looking at the ongoing support for the Heritage Park water taxi. I don't know, I would imagine you guys are on board. with that.
Yes.
And we're just wondering, you know, from the state's perspective, what, I don't know, Mark, if you wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, the Heritage Park has been a concept that's been around for a long time. The town and the city of Groton and the city of New London have provided local dollars to support the water taxi in the past. We have a request on the agenda
Yes.
later on this evening for support for next year. Anything we can get from the state to help. I mean, it's an initiative. It's been kicking around a long time. It's finally getting some traction. It would be good to get a second and a third year of some type of subsidy for the water taxi and other aspects of the park. It's more, you know, it's a necklace of attractions along the Thames River on both sides of the river, and I think has served as a great example on how we can, by combining together, we can you know, put our best foot forward and trying to market some of the attractions that both sides of the river already has. I think the other, probably the big ask would be for funding for the dock up at the Nautilus Museum. Just a little bit of history. You know, the dock had been designed probably 10, 12 years ago. We had well in excess of $500,000 set aside for the dock. We actually were able to acquire, the collective we, able to acquire an easement over the Amtrak rail line, or for some Amtrak property, which people thought would be next to impossible. Everything was done except the dock never got built. And there was an issue I won't get into now. I'd be glad to let you guys know what the issue was, but it caused a delay, which meant by the time we were ready to move forward, there wasn't enough money, and the money had been siphoned off to be used in other locations. And so that's, you know, getting the Nautilus as one of getting a dock up at the Nautilus. Subbase is on board. They have been on board. The museum is on board. Really would super enhance the whole Thames River Heritage Park experience. I mean, it would really be a benefit to everybody, not just the museum, but everybody else that's part of this necklace of attractions on both sides of the river. We have had, the mayor and I did have a meeting a couple weeks ago with Scott Bates from the state. I know there are discussions going on with the folks up at the museum. I mean, that's the big ask, at least from Heritage Park standpoint, is to get some commitment of state funding so that that dock can get built. We're still making copies of the plans for people because there's that much interest.
Can you, for two things that I would need, on the Heritage Park water taxi, can you get me the data on ridership, how much?
I can send it to you.
Yeah, how much the towns have contributed, what the cost was.
Sure.
I think that's important to be able to have that information. And also, obviously, all the information on the dock, the cost.
Yeah,
That
if
would
I
be
could be
helpful,
copied on that,
so
that
that
would
we
be-
can.
I'm sorry?
If I could be copied on that, then
Absolutely.
we could
Yeah.
both work both angles that we have. You know,
Okay.
and it might be a multi-year process
will tell
to get
you
all this,
That
to get
the
that
talk
built.
has been, this is going to be an even more brutal session than the previous one, and that necessities will be looked at, but, you know, wants are going to be wants, and they probably will not be something that will be able to be funded.
Mhm.
So I just want to make sure everybody, I mean, we have bridges that are on the critical list that, you know, you can't move safety equipment across. Those will take priority over funding of other things. But I just want everybody to know that's, you know, that's kind of where we are. So we're walking into, you know, looking at a $1.5 billion deficit to start. So we'll, obviously, Chris and I and Joe will do everything that we can to fight for Groton. I just want to kind of give you a
Brings us down a
idea
few
on the
notches, but-
landscape
Reality.
of where we are.
You know, our priorities are the ECS funding, the general budget funding. I think that's everyone's priority. The dock is certainly something that people have wanted to do for years, and it might take us a couple years to get that for the town.
Harry?
Yeah, just to tag on to that, Councilor Norton and I went down to NLC last year, and that was one of about 5 things that we asked for help to to Joe Courtney and Murphy and Blumenthal's offices. So I have that summary somewhere that I
That'd be
presented
great.
to them, and I'll throw that, I'll make sure that I revive that. You have it probably too, Mark, but I'll try to find what I wrote and gave them too, so.
Yes, because it's much easier to get state dollars when we have federal matching dollars that are above and beyond the state and local dollars.
Dean?
Well, we must be on some sort of a priority list, because I don't know how to account for all the vast clear cutting on Allen Street that's occurred over the last month. I never really thought about just how, about all that vegetation and the absolute rock bottom necessity to remove it this year. I don't know what money was used for that, or maybe there was matching federal funds. I'm being facetious.
It wasn't even on the
but-
power line side.
What's that?
It's not even on the line where the side where the power lines are. I noticed it too, that's why I'm saying.
It just, I mean, you see that and you think, well, I'm sure we're not actually on a priority list. I bet they've done something like that all across the state. It's very typical of government, which is the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing. But in a year, especially when we're in the red, people see something like that. And it's out of the legislature's control, I understand, it's the executive branch, but holy smokes.
Well, at least I didn't have to worry about cleanup because there've been people pulling up and taking the wood all the last couple of weeks, so.
It just didn't seem like the year to do it. But anyway.
I know that there's been a lot of talk out there about regionalization. And certainly,
Regional tax, too.
the town is certainly anxious to regionalize any way we can from a within the town perspective. So,
Yeah, but we'll make sure that some of those regionalization bills that are out there could cost Groton more. So we need to make
Understood.
sure that
yep.
we
Yep.
all have their eye, and everyone else who has their eyes on it, make sure that we don't mistakenly vote on a concept that seems good.
Totally agree. I appreciate that.
Yeah, well, the last thing you need is essentially an additional layer of government where the
Yes.
town expenses don't really get reduced, but now you have,
A new tax.
all towns have to contribute something to some new regional body, but we do sort of now pay for cog. But
Mark?
Yeah, I mean, there's been regional incentive grants that, have kind of been used as a carrot for the last couple of years. We just, at the COG, were told that they've been canceled for the next year, and it just seems to me that, I understand the budgets are tight, but I also understand Groton rarely sticks its hand out and asks for anything, and I think that's starting to change. But it seems to me if really people really think regionalization is the way to go, and I do, that turning the faucet on and off for these types of grants really sends the wrong message, because there's a lot of folks that don't believe in regionalism and will use this as a reason why we shouldn't go down this path. Having said that, and I think, Chris, this is probably the program you may be thinking, or I think this is what you're referring to. And we've got a commissioner, Department of Public Health, that is proposing to regionalize health districts. Basically
That is what I was referring to. yes.
Basically end up with 8 or 10 health districts, which on the surface sounds great, though I think we're very happy with Ledge Light. We've regionalized. But the bottom line is that what he's proposing is basically towns will need to fund, their contribution to his model is 1.5% of the local general fund budget. It's almost $2 million. That's 6- and 7-fold more than what we're providing Ledge Light Health District. This is absolutely crazy. And it's not clear in my mind. I actually thought there was some legislation, but now I'm starting to think there is no legislation. He's just kind of gearing up to maybe be proposing some legislation. That's not the type of regionalization that we need. And I believe he is now going on the road and meeting with communities and so forth with all these promises that over time, the districts will be paid for 100% through user fees. But how you get from 1.5% to user fees, I'm not sure how that's going to happen. The other thing, much smaller magnitude, but very important, we're hearing that Kinetic Card funding is going to be eliminated. It's a relatively small amount of money statewide, but we have 3 libraries in this town. And this whole, and particularly the Mystic Noank Library, has been kind of the poster child example between us and Stonington over the years. And the the purpose of Connecticut funding was to at least provide some incentives so that one community doesn't shut out another community from people being able to visit each other's library. And I'm just afraid if this funding is eliminated, as we hear it's going to be proposed, that you're going to have kind of these border wars going on with respect to library services. And keeping in mind, as we all know, the Groton Public Library is a magnet. We have lots of people from the surrounding towns use the Groton Public Library, and I don't think anybody really wants to change that, but we've kind of justified that with the thought that we get $35,000 of Connecticut funding, and that kind of softens the impact a little bit. Just want to make sure that the only other thing I have, and we've only talked about this in very general terms over the years, and it gets back to, you know, a piece of land that the state owns that maybe we would like to own, and that is some of the real estate that's in front of the library and senior center. Basically, where there's that hedge of hedge of bushes. That right-of-way is very wide because it was going to be the Bluff Point connector. It was going to be like a Rocky Neck connector down to Bluff Point. And when Mr. Bentley acquired some of the state right-of-way to build his building in the early 80s, basically, you know, his building's right on the road, or that building, the white building right up there, is right on the road. So I think based on previous discussions we've had with the council, we'd like to explore the possibility of somehow having that property turned over, some of that right-of-way turned over to the town. Bluff Point connector's never going to happen. They're going to have to take down Mr. Bentley's building in order to do it and go right through the middle of Fort Hill neighborhood. It's just excess right-of-way. We're maintaining it. I think we'd like to own it at some point. It's a no cost, it's no budget attached to it or anything like that, but if there's time and interest, if you think it's worth pursuing, we can certainly get you a map and identify the square footage.
Thank you. Anybody have anything else before we let our state legislatures go?
I will speak to the regionalization grants, and what I have been told, and this is not an endorsement of this philosophy or thought process, but it's just what I've been told. The regionalization grants, instead of providing, the mindset is somewhat changing in the legislature right now, and it's saying, instead of incentivizing people to regionalize, we're going to penalize them if they don't. Because the only way that they were able to, you know, get people to do things is to hang a carrot of dollars out, and the thought process now is saying, if you don't do it, then we're going to cut your funding. And that's what I'm hearing, and that may be one of the reasons why you're seeing these regionalization grants.
Well, they're sending really mixed messages.
Mixed messages,
I mean, one of the purposes, and Bruce would remember this, I mean, one of the grants that our COG put in was really to do an assessment. Instead of, we used to have, you know, somebody from one town, hey, can I borrow, or can we hire a building inspector together? And, you know, and the COG would spend a lot of time surveying everybody and nothing would ever happen. And one of these grants that we put in was to really do a comprehensive analysis. Where can towns work together and provide a roadmap for building inspection services, plan review services, public work, and do a kind of not wait for one first selectman or mayor or manager be in a bind, but to kind of see where the pieces fit together. And that, to me, I think will be very helpful as we finish. That did get funded. That is being done now. But it really sends, I mean, I can see that philosophy too. But
and I think this is coming out of the executive. This is not coming out of the legislature. So, you know, that's what we've been told anyway. So
I see with, you know, the grant dollars being tighter, saying, well, if there's not going to be a grant, we don't have the money for the grants, what's another way to get what the state wants out of towns, and the other ways to pull funding. But we'll be here to make sure that we get our funds, you know, and with the regionalization, we will read that legislation and make sure that there's not unwise decisions that affect our town.
Very good. Harry?
I don't know where we're at with this, and while you're here, maybe I'll bring it up. Where are we with that, changing that radius for the airport, Mark?
Oh, the airport development zone, the application went in.
Okay, so
well over a month ago. And as John and Paige noted when they briefed the council a little while ago, we just went in with the 2 mile, the thought was, the advice was go in, comply with the guidelines. Once you get it approved, it will be easier to make a case to modify the radius.
Yeah, the radius, half of the radius goes out into Fisher's Island Sound, and you can't develop out there.
I'm
so.
very familiar with
You're
the
very- okay,
Bradley.
good. That's why I'm bringing it up, just-
Airport, so if you want to copy
Just-
me on any of that, I'm very familiar with how Bradley does it. and-
Perfect, just keep your
And can be
ears
helpful
open,
to get
that's all.
things done.
Thank you.
Well,
And you can always call us, obviously.
right.
There
yeah.
is a really short window to get bills in, and that's why we were pushy to get here.
Yes.
So if you can get us that information on the NOLA ASAP, that would be really helpful. And then, obviously, we'll keep in touch, and if there's public hearings or we need your help, we'll call you. And you can call us anytime, and we'll
Yeah,
be available.
anytime, please.
Dean?
Just a scheduling thing, when does your session start?
January 4th.
Okay.
What
And
is
what's
it? I didn't hear it.
January 4th.
4th.
Right around the corner. And what's this window you're sworn
You have till the 13th to get a bill in, but you have to do all your legislative work, your homework, you have to have it crafted, you have to have the lawyers review it. So there's not, we're doing it now.
You mean the actual
The
substance? It
actual-
can't just be a placeholder?
You can do a
It can be a
placeholder.
It can be a placeholder.
But if you want something more specific, then you have to start lobbying the people on the different committees, and hopefully we'll know what our committees are before the 4th. That would be nice.
One would hope.
And this is long session year, right?
This is a long session.
So you can do this yourselves, put these things in, so, okay.
Yes, possibly longer than normal session.
Yeah,
No,
that
you
would-
can bank
that would
on
maybe
that.
be the one last ask is, I know it's
I
going
know
to
you
be
want your
tough.
I
budget
know.
before you do your budget.
Get it done in a timely
I know.
manner.
We will all do our best, but I think we're prepared for a long session this term. We've got a lot to talk about in Hartford.
Well, thank you both very much.
Okay,
Congratulations to
thanks
you
for
both,
having
and
us.
good
Thank you.
luck
Thanks for
in
having
your,
us.
in the upcoming year. We have 2015-0178, the Knowing School Public Gardens Task Force Semi-Annual Report.
We thought they were going to be here, maybe they'll be here at 7, so.
Okay.
If we could skip it.
We'll pass
go-
over.
We can go to the third item.
Which is 2016-0286, contract agreement between the Groton Board of Education and the Association of Groton School Administrators. And we have the Board of Ed Attorney, I'm guessing?
Yes, Floyd Dugas.
Hi, Floyd. And
Lori Lapine, Director of Human Resources.
hi, Lori.
Good evening.
Good evening. Welcome.
Thank you. So let me do a brief overview, give you some of the basic facts and information, then Lori will correct me. And then any questions you have, I'll be happy to answer. This, of course, is the school administrators, which are, the principals, the assistant principals, coordinators, and the like. There are approximately 30 of them in the bargaining unit, and they are governed, like the teachers, by the Teacher Negotiation Act, and that's why we're here before you. Ultimately, the deal that we struck was pretty straightforward, consistent with state averages this year, and frankly, last year. The agreement that we reached was for a 2% general wage increase each of 3 years of the contract. State averages for general wage increase were 2%. The typical administrator contract total, however, was 2.5%. Because other contracts have steps in them, we really don't have any steps in this contract. So we thought that the aiming for the state averages just on the general wage increase side was appropriate. On the health insurance side, last time, 2 years ago, we put in place a high deductible health plan as the only plan for this group. So we already had that in place. What we had a minor tweak to the plan this time. The one we negotiated had a 10% in-network coinsurance. In other words, after the employees had hit their deductible, they still had to pay 10% of the plan, and they perceived that as rather costly to them. What we did was to switch that for a post-deductible prescription. So in other words, once they've hit their deductibles, Then they still have to pay $5 for generic, $25 for brand, and $40 for non-formulary drugs. And frankly, the cost impact to the board and to the town was the same. So it was a little bit easier pill for them to swallow it that way, so we agreed to that change. And of course, we required them to give us back 1% each year. Right now, they're at 18%. It'll be 19, 20, and then 21% that they're contributing towards the plan. And by the way, I should state that with teacher and administrator contracts under the Teacher Negotiation Act, we're always negotiating a year ahead of time. So this contract goes into place in July of 2017. We had a couple other minor points, one of which is, even though we'll have to see what happens to so-called Obamacare, given the recent election, it's still a law. We're still facing it in the year 2000, and we have a reopener in the contract in case the Cadillac tax becomes a reality. We also increased the work year for a handful of employees who worked 196 days to 200 days because the feeling was that we needed them, and some of those folks are actually working those additional days and being paid. So we just formalized it in the contract, and I believe that's everything. So the contract is consistent with other administrator contracts. We're, I think, in the right place in terms of health insurance. The only other thing I would point out is that the base salary for this group is a round number, $4 million. So when we talk about 1%, we're talking about $40,000. So a 2% increase is $80,000. Okay. Anything you want to add? Okay.
That's good.
Dean?
Yeah, just hand it for a second.
Greg, you want to go ahead?
Sure. Thanks for brief. I just had two questions.
Go.
First is, how do you guys work a year ahead when it seems like the other contracts that we deal with, we're working behind?
Because there's a statute, the Teacher Negotiation Act is different from the Municipal Employee Relation Act, and the Teacher Act requires us by law to negotiate ahead of time. The rationale is, particularly with teacher contracts, they have such a significant impact on the town budget that the law forces us to do it a year ahead of time. And the timelines are not waivable, unlike under the Municipal Employee Relations Act.
All right, thanks. And then, how about retirement? How does the retirement get negotiated?
It doesn't, because they're part of the state teacher retirement system. So they make a contribution out of their pay, and it's all handled at the state level. So it has nothing to do with local taxpayer dollars at all.
Thanks.
Dean?
Yeah, you noted that there were 30, and I tried to do a count myself. And back in the 2012 to 2015 contract, I had about 30, like 30.4 actually, I think, full-time positions, or full-time equivalents. And I count 22 now, but I may be off. I'm way off apparently if the 30 is true. So I have, because what I'm trying to do is get an idea of the total cost of the contracts. So we have elementary school principals, I imagine we have 7.
That's correct.
And I'm only going by the staff directory that I get, and I realize not everybody might be on the staff directory for one reason or another. 2 middle school principals.
Yes.
George Reese, Fitch High School, 1 for him.
Yep.
Yes.
Now, assistant elementary principals, do we have one for each?
We have 6.
We have 6, because I think there was a time when 2 schools shared.
Correct.
Okay. So I have 6, I have 5 there, I must have missed one. Middle school assistant principals, 2. High school assistant
4.
principal, I thought there were at least 2.
Middle school.
I have
assistant
4 middle
principal.
school assistants.
You have 4 middle school
No,
assistants.
there's, middle school assistant principals is only 2. I think that's a typo.
Okay.
Okay. And assistant principals at the high school. I mean, I know of Erin McGuire, for example, but I think there have to be others.
Correct.
There have been more in the past.
Right.
So
There
how
are-
many do you have now?
There are 2,
There are 2 altogether.
Including Erin?
including Aaron, right.
Okay. Well, you know where I was off on elementary assistant principals? because there is a Pam Porter listed in the directory and a Pamela Porter listed. Two
Same
different
person.
schools. Is it two different people?
No, it's the same person. She's sharing those two schools.
Okay, okay. And then this is where it gets a little murky. There's a position, Director of Pupil Personnel and the Supervisor of Special Education. The central office directory has a Denise Doolittle for both.
So the Director of Pupil Personnel, there's one,
Right.
which is Doolittle. And then Supervisor of Special Education, there are 3.
There are 3, okay.
Correct.
Then I misread the descriptions. So, and that would not be Denise Doolittle.
Correct.
Okay. And then Dean of Students, I didn't find anybody, I mean,
There
what
is-
had been department head in the past as a description.
Correct. The Dean of Students, there is one at the high school.
One at the high school, that's
Yes.
kind of what I thought. And curriculum coordinators, I have 3.
There are 2 now.
Oh, there are 2, okay.
Correct.
So who don't we have anymore? Or
Brian,
by
by
description?
title, technology.
Technology
Yes.
not there, okay. All right. And that should all give me 30. Well, it should.
10, 16, 18. 26, 27.
That's what I count, yeah.
Oh, you got 27?
27.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Happy medium. And that would put the present, I should say, the 2017, 2018 contract value, just salaries, mind you, not anything, not any other costs, at about 4 million, you say?
Correct.
Okay. All right. And I've been tracking this as best as I can from about 2012. And it appears as though, and the average increases have been about, I think, 1.89% annually. If you were to look at the last year of this proposed contract and the first year of the 2012 contract, the average annual is about 1.89, 1.9, I think curriculum coordinators just above 2. Is this the average in the state? Is this the state's experience?
Yeah, I would say the state experience is probably a little higher.
Okay. And this goes to your point that were we to reject the contract and say, see you on the field of battle, that we might wind up shedding a little more blood than we care to.
Correct, and incur costs of probably $15,000 to $20,000 in the process.
Because under law, we pay the fees.
Correct.
Yeah. Thank you.
Great. Then Harry. Harry, why don't you go ahead?
No, I just want to thank you for coming here, because I heard the town clerk say that we got notice that the contract was agreed upon, but when we get notice, we have 30 days to do something, and we need to hear what's going on, which is just exactly why you're here, and I really appreciate the fact that you're here. So I think, and our action is to do nothing or take action, I think. I was actually part of this way back when Lauren Leddick was doing it, way back. How are we for administrators, though, comparatively speaking? We have 30, I think I've heard spoken here. I mean, what do we have 10 years ago? Do we have more now than we used to have? Do we have less? Do you know?
I don't know the answer to that. There are reports that you can get for every school district in the state that show your administrator to students or administrator to teachers. It used to be called the Strategic School Profile, and that can give you a sense of how you match up to other folks. But I don't know how that compares to 10 years ago.
And I'm glad to hear that you got some more extension of hours, too, because that's always been something that's been talked about.
Right.
Because there's stuff that needs to happen in the summertime, or later after the kids leave for the summer, or to come in earlier.
Parents want to contact somebody.
Yeah, no, I know, it's, that's a good thing, thank you.
Yeah.
That's all I have, Joyce.
Greg?
I was just wondering, do you know how we compare to neighboring states?
Neighboring states?
Yeah,
Neighboring.
In terms of wages or settlements?
wages.
I can tell you that Connecticut teachers, and I would assume that administrators fall in line, are the second or third highest paid in the country.
That I know.
And that tends to track across the board with
Right.
other cops and, other folks too.
All right, thanks.
Diane?
That I actually knew. I was just going to ask comparison for the area towns, the pay and the benefits, are they about the same? Are we higher, lower?
But on the pay, you're probably slightly higher than average. On the benefits, you're definitely a little ahead of the curve.
Okay.
Karen?
I think I should say, and you probably all know this, but I sat in on the mediation for this contract as the council's representative, and I think it's a fair contract. Certainly, I think when you go into any mediation, you hope you're going to prevail on everything. You'd like to pay less and, you know, not have to give anything away, but the reality is this is a fair contract. I think the town got all of the essential things that we needed to get, and I think the union did well too in terms of what they were able to get. So I think it's fair on both sides, and I totally supported it.
Lori, do you know, some of these positions are somewhat new, right? The director of pupil personnel, maybe, or the dean of student, there's none that are...
Director's been around for
Yeah.
a long, long time.
The Dean of Students has been in place for, I'd say, probably 2 years now, I believe. Yeah.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
relatively new. I guess.
Yeah, fairly new, yeah.
Okay. And did that replace another position?
They were down an assistant principal, and they transferred that responsibility to a Dean of Students, so they did kind of realign some of the responsibilities.
So is the dean of students an assistant principal at the high school as well?
No, no.
No. Okay. And how many curriculum coordinators are there?
There are 2. There were 3, reduced by 1 this past, at the end of this past budget year.
And for you as the director of HR, do you fall on, you're not an administrator, obviously, do you fall under a department budget? Is that?
Correct. I'm not within this bargaining unit, correct.
Are you union?
No.
I didn't think so, okay. So how many positions in the Board of Education, or in the you know, in Groton Education are not union, are non-union?
How many, which positions are you referring to?
Any, how many, like, we know in the town there's 40
Yeah.
non-union positions. How many are there in the?
Geez, I don't know an exact number off the top of my head. I would say it's probably in the range of about 35 to 40.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I just look, I mean, I get what Councilor Morton is saying, that it's a fair contract, but when you look at the salaries, it's just, it's a little shocking, you know, that there's 30 positions that are, you know, 160,000 to 115,000. And it sounds like, you know, from what Floyd was saying, that we're the second highest in the country, but
A lot of money.
it's a big chunk of change. So, Dean?
Well, one thing to keep in mind, you get to see this when we talk about the teacher's contract, is you've got all the steps, and you know you've got first-year teachers and 10-year teachers, and 20-year teachers, they're way off step, way out of the grid. The salaries here don't reflect the years put in, but I'm familiar with only some of the people here. Would you say that we have a more experienced group here in terms of professionals? And they would have to be professionals, they do require specialized education for this. Do we have a more experienced group of professionals? Is it a mix of experienced people and neophytes, or what?
Yeah, I would say certainly these are individuals who have been with the district for quite some time. So we are looking at an element of experience for sure. There's a small number of newer administrators, but the majority are individuals who have been in the district for quite some time and do have quite a bit of administrative experience.
Okay.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Just one final question. Seeing as there is, they are well paid, how are they held accountable? In other words, how do you, as the HR director, how are you aware of issues? How do you deal with them? That kind of thing.
Yeah, there is a comprehensive evaluation process for administrators. It's state regulated, so you know, the district isn't able to dictate what that looks like. They follow a state model, and they build in accountability measures, including student data, survey data from parents, students. So all of that is collected and included in the evaluation process, school climate information, things like that.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, so we don't need to do anything, right?
That's correct.
You can vote it up, vote it down, or just let the 30 days run.
Yeah.
And if you do that, then it's approved.
Right.
Yeah, and actually, a very technical point under the Teacher Negotiation Act, if you want to reject it, you actually have to affirmatively vote to reject it. Otherwise, it stands. There's an argument that if you voted to approve it and it didn't pass, that wouldn't be sufficient. And of course, you always have the right to take no action whatsoever, in which case, after the 30th day, it will become binding.
I'm fine letting it go and let the 30 days go. Is everybody okay with that?
That's good.
When's our 30 days up?
11 days.
Okay.
Nice, Harry.
It was the 24th it was given to the town
He's
clerk.
all over it.
Right?
Right. Wow, could this have been given to us earlier, though?
That's kind of why I brought it up at the liaison meeting last Wednesday night with the superintendent.
Well, what happens is it's sent to the town clerk by the arbitrator. So that starts the clock running when the
Yeah,
clerk
the
gets it.
24th was
Right.
that date of November, I think. Is it on 23rd, actually, so it's 10 days.
Yeah. I don't know if there was a meeting where we could have had this on the agenda, or whether it would have made a difference, I don't know.
Well, when did we receive it from the town clerk?
23rd
Of November?
November.
Yeah, that's, I heard her say that last week at the meeting, last Tuesday night, that she had gotten that the 23rd.
Gotcha.
And that was the first that I'd heard of it, and I know what the rules are, so.
It's stamped the 23rd, yeah.
Gotcha.
Should not the town clerk have, did the town manager get informed that it came to the town clerk's, Mark?
The town clerk's office let us know
Okay.
that they had received it.
Okay,
And I clarified with her when did she receive it, and she said the 23rd.
okay.
So since the 23rd was a Wednesday, and...
We had a fifth Tuesday.
The fifth Tuesday, and the first Tuesday in December, being the 6th, was a regular town council meeting, and the second Tuesday, tonight, is a committee of the whole. This is the first.
Right on schedule.
So this is it, okay.
Gotcha. Well, thank you very much for coming.
Yes, thank you.
Our pleasure, thank you.
Next is 2016-0291, request for donation for Thames River Heritage Park water taxi, fiscal year 2018, and in the packet is a letter from Chris Cox requesting $10,000 for the upcoming fiscal year. They'll also be requesting it from the city of Groton and from New London as well. And I know tomorrow is the final Thames River Heritage Park Foundation meeting of the year at 8:30 in the Municipal building. So I think the issue was that, not an issue, but they're looking for a commitment now for the next year. And so if we commit now, we'd have to find it from the existing budget. Is that the?
Yeah, I think you have three options. You could say, no, we're not going to contribute again. That's one option, and I wouldn't recommend that. The other is to direct that we put it in next year's budget proposal. And the third is to basically approve it as a supplemental this year. And the reason for doing that potentially is they probably would like to know if this funding is in place well before July 1st of next year or June 1st of next year, because I think the desire is to start the water taxi as early in the season as possible. But those are the options you have. You don't have to take any action tonight if you want to think about it, but a supplemental appropriation is one possibility, or just directing me to put it in next year's budget, maybe under the legislative account.
That we put in a supplemental appropriation for this year, and that next year we put it in the budget.
So you want to put it in twice?
Yeah, yeah.
Because we're up to date this year. We're looking at at, the money, if you want to put it as a supplemental this year, it would be for 2018.
Okay.
It's guaranteed,
Okay.
Yeah.
basically.
Do we have a second?
I'm not sure.
Karen?
Question mark, do we have $10,000 extra in money?
Well, we have, I forget the dollar amount, what we set aside this year, but we do have contingency. This would be coming out of the contingency account, and we've only spent a few dollars out of that so far this year.
Diane?
I would like to see what the city of Groton and New London is going to do.
They're going to give.
They are?
Yeah,
That's my question.
They're going to give. Greg?
I guess it sort of bothers me that no one's here to, like, request this.
I didn't invite them, so if you
And-
want me to invite them, it's not that I disinvited them, I
Right.
just,
And I know the discussions we have with the folks looking for money during the budget time, you know, the libraries and the ambulance services, and we look at their books and we ask questions. I'm for the program. It just, you know, I think we should be fair and treat everybody the same way. But
Okay, thanks. Dean?
I think a distinction might be that in those cases, they more fall on the side of somebody asking for a donation for a good cause, whereas the water taxi is sort of our thing along with the surrounding communities, and so maybe that's why. I don't know. I know I looked at that other item on the agenda. I didn't expect anyone to be here because I saw it as an ongoing Groton project.
Yeah.
But that's neither here nor there. I'd be in favor of an appropriation now, and I guess next year's budget would be for what? This would set us up. for
Could somebody second Rich's motion so
Before
we can
talk about
discuss it?
further,
Yeah.
Sure. Well, I'll second the motion for discussion.
What, I'm sorry,
We
Nikki.
should probably just do another motion.
Okay.
We had so much discussion.
Yeah, okay.
I'll move that we take 10,000 from contingency and pay them.
I'll second it.
Great, we have a motion and a second, so further discussion. I will say that, you know, it's a great program, it's a great idea. I do agree with Councilor Grimm that there should be some accountability, that you just don't want to give money and you know, you want to make sure, you know, we should see a statement, see something to see how the money's being spent, just for due diligence, you know. I know this is not going to be a popular thing to say, but I think it's also interesting, I think, Mark, we've talked about it before, that they hit Groton twice. That, you know, Groton City and Groton Town are being asked to pay $10,000 each. And maybe if they did it, maybe if they didn't, they'd be asking for a combination of 30 from the two towns, I don't know. But I think it's interesting that you know, they hit Groton twice. That if the town pays, it should be for the city as well. But that's, you know, that's the city's choice, I guess, to make that donation. But I think I'm going to be attending the meeting tomorrow, so I can express. I know we do receive the financial statements, so I will get them copied and brought in. But I think it's definitely a worthwhile endeavor and one that's good for the region. So I would support it. Karen?
Yeah, I would like to also suggest that going forward, they need to get the request in a more, this has to be done in a more timely manner, because what's happening is this is the second year in a row now that we've done a supplemental appropriation to pay for this. You know, you're coming in November and saying, we'd like 10,000, and if you could get it to us before July 1, that would be great. And so it necessitates a supplemental appropriation every year. So either we need to put money in the budget again next year in anticipation of the request coming in before June 30th for the following year. Otherwise, this is going to be an unexpected expense every year.
Well, I think one of the options is that we can say that we'll put it into the 2018 budget and wait to see if it gets approved. That's right. That's we could deal with it that way.
Yeah, I'm the one that's kind of introducing that if I was them, I would want to know if the funding was in place before I actually started my water taxi season, which I believe they would like to start probably towards the end of May, I believe. I don't know that for sure. The mayor may have a better handle on that than I do. Because the letter, Chris's letter, talks about the upcoming fiscal year. And Chris is a local guy. I'm pretty sure he knows that our fiscal year is July 1st to June 30th, but I don't know what their fiscal year is. So I mean, in order to plan a seasonal activity, this is almost kind of like the golf course, it's very different, but it's in 2 fiscal years, but from a golf course perspective, the year is the summer. That spreads between our 2 fiscal years. And I know the desire here has been to be able to have a date certain where the water taxi starts. You can advertise it, let people know, and probably starting on or about Memorial Day as opposed to 4th of July or the fireworks or whatever. So they may be perfectly happy with your action, if it was your action, to simply say, Mr. Manager, put it in next year's budget. I'm the one that's kind of introduced. I don't think Chris mentions that in his letter. It's just, I know that's been a sticking point in the past.
Mark, how much is in contingency? What's the, I mean, if we haven't, when do we start?
I think there's only been 2 items that the council has approved, and they've been under $10,000 each. So I think we've maybe spent 15, 16 out of 350, 400. The number did get reduced last year.
And this will have to go to the RTM for approval.
If it's 10,000, it needs to go to the RTM. If it's $9,999, it does not.
But we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the $10,000 out of contingency for 2018, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? That passes 7-0-0. And we have 2016-0287, Department of Transportation easement, Route 1 South Road.
So we had we received 2 letters from DOT concerning their desire to acquire an easement from the town at the intersection of Route 1 and South Road, but it's on the Groton Utilities side of the street. It would be on the east side of the driveway that goes back to the filtration plant, where the pump station is, the sewage pump station that the town owns. The easement is needed to support the installation of a guy wire for a telephone pole. It's my understanding, based on a previous meeting, that intersection will be re-signaled in the next couple of years. A new traffic light put in, replacement, and the stanchion locations to support the new light will be different than what's there now. I did have Public Works, Gary Schneider and Greg Hanover specifically take a look at it, because that is where the pump station is, and there's lots of things in the ground servicing the pump station, and they have assured me that the easement area that DOT is looking to acquire is outside of any area that is currently or in the future would be encumbered with any underground piping or other utilities to support the pump station. The map, the little sketch that they provided doesn't show the pump station on it at all, and so that's why we kind of went through that effort to make sure that they weren't going to be putting a guy wire through the middle of some 30-inch sewer line. So when you're looking at this map, just as an orientation, Route 1 is down at the bottom of the page where you see Pequannock. That's Route 1, and you can see right off in the lower left-hand corner bituminous driveway notation. That is no longer there. That was just recently taken out, but there is a little driveway that services the pump station, which is probably in the general vicinity of a little bit off to the right of subject to right to connect to sewer system note. It sits back up on the property a little bit. The easement area is 10 by 42. It's a little bit out of skew, so the other dimension's a little bit shorter, and the DOT then followed up with a second letter basically offering us $500 to acquire the easement. I'm sure they've spent way more than $500 preparing the paperwork, and we've probably spent more than $500 reviewing it and putting it on the agenda, but that's what
Do
they're
they need to
offering.
get the same approval from the city as well?
Yeah, on the other side, yes. On the other side of the driveway that goes to the treatment plant, they are also asking the city, actually I think it's for 2 easement areas, but I believe the guy wires are already there. It's not here. He thought it was already here, but it's not. But I believe on the other side, they're already there. So yes.
And, okay. And we need to accept the,
Yeah, if it's, if the council is agreeable, we would need to prepare a motion basically noting that we are agreeable to provide DOT with an easement and authorizing the manager to sign whatever documents are necessary for that transfer.
I'll move that.
fabulous.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to move this forward. Any other discussion on this? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? That does pass 7-0 to 0. Next is 2016-0292, adoption of ordinance to amend the enterprise zone ordinance. And that is,
You did have a public hearing last week. There were no public comments provided, yay or nay, on the proposed amendment. And the purpose of having it on the agenda tonight is to see how the council would like to go with the proposed amendment. The proposed amendment in and of itself isn't setting in motion any particular action. It's just allowing you in the future to do something if you so choose.
I'll make a motion to adopt the proposed amendment.
Second.
we have a motion by Councilor Grimm, a second by Councilor Antipas. Any discussion on this? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? That passes 7-0 to 0. Next is City Highway Budget, FYE 2016, potential executive session. Mark?
The mayor and I did have a chance to meet with Mayor Galbraith and Ron Uhas last week. And they presented us, though I did not, I apologize.
I brought it.
Okay. They did have a handout for us at the meeting, basically documenting, based on what the commissioner said about providing some documentation as to their rate of expenditure for the year in question. And my recollection, and I had asked, I think at the meeting I had asked that they send us over some further documentation.
Which we haven't received.
I haven't received it at this point, but they actually were, at part of their, these are unaudited numbers, but part of the number that they're requesting funding for includes, and correct me, Bruce, if I'm wrong, I think it's a $95,000 credit for vehicle purchases. They haven't purchased the vehicles because of the budget dispute, but they'd like to purchase the vehicles. So
It was a Mason dump,
truck.
a Mason dump plow sander and a pickup with, left something, I can't remember. There's a pickup truck with liftgate, the liftgate. So that, I mean, so they had these in their budget,
In their operating budget?
in their, yes. And then, when the decision came down, it was pointed out by Councilor Antipas that they had money left over in their budget, were waiting for it to be audited. And they audited it, and there was, it ended up being, if, without the
the vehicles spent, it was like let's say it was $160,000 being returned. But their point was that they had 2 vehicles for $95,000 that they hadn't bought and wouldn't be in the audit because they were waiting to see what happened with the money. And since the money's being returned, they're asking to withhold that $95,000 so they could spend it on the 2 vehicles that they hadn't bought to date. And so, as Mark noted, we did ask for the information about the vehicles, and we haven't received that yet. But that's where we're at right now, is that we're waiting to return the money to them from the 2016 budget, but we're waiting for the final audited number, and they're asking for this adjustment of the $95,000 for the 2 vehicles. So in their 2016 budget, part of their budget was 2 vehicles.
That's the budget we're in now, or the one that ended last July?
The one that ended last July. So the numbers were audited, and there was a discrepancy, there was not a discrepancy. There was $160,000 not spent out of the budget.
Okay.
They're
Okay?
saying 95 was for the 2 vehicles.
They're saying $95,000 was for 2 vehicles that they now want to buy because they're getting the
Well, they had
money.
150 grand left, and part of that was because they didn't spend the 90 on the car.
Right.
Okay,
95.
now I get it.
Yes.
Now I get it.
Now, I have a question. So does that mean that next year will be 150 less because if we do give them the 95 for those 2 vehicles? You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean, but they're at different budget years, so that 95,000 doesn't have that placeholder in the 2017 budget, but I know their budget went down a little bit in 2017, but I don't, you have to go back and look and see what, maybe they're buying other vehicles and that's the placeholder, I don't know. So, I think that we should wait until we get the backup from the city with regards to what the vehicles are.
Well, I think it was, if I could, I'd like to recommend the council take some action so we can prepare a motion for next week, because then we're not meeting the following
Yep.
committee of the whole, and we'll be in the middle of January. And I will reach out to Mr. Uhas. I was planning on doing it today, but I was at meetings all day, so I just never had a chance. I think we were just looking for a little bit further documentation, and that's not so much on the vehicles, but on some of the other numbers. And I just didn't have a chance to call him today.
Okay.
And then if we don't get it for next week, you can
Okay.
table action on it, but.
Next week, right?
Well, is there any, does everybody agree that, that we instead of withholding the difference between, their budget was $2,039,472, and their actual was $1,957,631. So that's a difference of, I think it's $81,000, give or take. So we would either withhold 81,000, or we would withhold 81,000 plus 95,000. Dean?
There's something to keep in mind. The city's highway budget is mostly funded by our appropriation, but not completely. It's not a huge difference, but we're within this little margin here. About $100,000 or so comes from other sources. So their budget may be $2 million. There was a round numbers, it was $2 million for fiscal year ending 2016, out of which they asked us for 1.9, say. That would have been everything except for the other funding sources. We were the major funding source. So they're saying, and as I recall, that the end of year, as of June 30th, the unaudited figure was, we hadn't spent, just to paraphrase, we haven't spent $123,000 in round numbers. I think that was the number. $123,000 of our budget. Now, how would you allocate that? And I don't know where those vehicles would fall. Is that under the $100,000 that comes from another source? Is that supposed to be covered all by us? Is it proportional? So I don't have enough information in front of me to make a calculation.
I mean, we can give a copy of this for next week's. They were over budget in administration, they were under budget in fleet, they were under budget in snow, they were under budget in engineering, under budget in public buildings, and under budget in RNS, which is, what's RNS?
Roads and streets.
Roads and streets. So they were over in administration and under in everything else. Harry?
Dean, I just make it clear, are we talking about their total budget? Because we don't pay for their public works director, is that right?
Well, yeah.
We do pay for that.
No,
So
it's not.
what are the other things that we don't pay in
Well,
their
I mean,
budget?
there are, if you look at their personnel listing, there's a lot
I
of
think it's
fractional,
equal.
including Tim Umretz, the director, because he's also used for buildings, he's also used, I think, for their Parks and Rec.
Okay.
So he's, some proportion of his salary, I can't remember exact off the top of my head what it is, some proportion is his, is part of their administrative cost for highway. And you see that throughout, not with every position, but with a lot of their positions. Some of the hours are here, some of the hours are there, some other department. They make the allocation. My point was, if we're working off of their highway budget, see, what we've done over the years is we've equated their request and our appropriation with their highway budget. Technically, their highway budget, at least the last year, and this may have been true in all the other years, is a little higher than the appropriation because they do get some funding from outside. So I wouldn't use their budget as a jumping off point. Because the only thing that's ever been in question is our appropriation to them, not the 100,000 or whatever it is that we get from someplace else. So my point is, we're talking about little bits here, moving backwards and forwards. I want to see all the numbers in front of me before I make any sort of decisions.
It is noted on the sheet, Mark, that the amount, the $95,000 was transferred into the Equipment Replacement Reserve Fund with the anticipation of purchasing the two vehicles once the arbitration was settled. I would like to know how much money is in the Equipment Replacement Reserve Fund. Yeah, I don't know either. So,
Well, our funding, the $95,000 of our funding hasn't been transferred anywhere because it hasn't been sent to the city yet. So I know what the words say, but I think they're simply, I think the point they're trying to make is they intentionally held back on purchasing these two pieces of equipment because of the dispute with the town. And but they were, if the funding was there, they would have purchased them in a timely manner. The wording of this, I have no idea what's in their reserve fund, but I know the $95,000 isn't there because we haven't given them the $95,000 yet.
yeah.
All right, so conceptually, according to the award, it's the 830,000 less, say, for argument's sake, that there was $123,000 as of June 30th, the unaudited figure. Say that figure held, and we're talking about vehicles. So it's what was held back less the $123,000. So on that basis, the city's saying, oh, we can account for $95,000 of that under budget figure. That was going to be vehicle purchases. If we went ahead and we bought them, you wouldn't have seen the $123,000 unaudited figure. So really, it's not the 830 minus the 123. It's the 830 minus whatever the leftover is after purchasing the vehicles. That's how they're framing it? Okay. So I think I don't have the numbers in front of me, so I'm arguing in the air.
I'll tell you the exact numbers here. This is the difference that they're it's $77,841.
The difference between what and what?
The difference between the budgeted and the actual, if you include the $95,000 for the vehicles and the actual.
Okay.
So the unaudited figure was actually higher than what they originally said.
So there are two unaudited figures. There was a figure that we saw in our town manager's report, based on their spreadsheets, where they said, here's where we're under as of June 30th. They wake up on July 31st and said, here's a we're rolling off our numbers. I remember it as 123, I could be wrong. I don't remember 160. So it sounds like it was 123, I wish I could go grab it from somewhere. It sounds like it was 123, the unaudited figure. Now the unaudited figure is some other figure?
172,841.
Okay. Oh, Greg, I'm sorry. Oh,
When does the audited figure come out?
And
Probably January, early February, same time.
I mean, can we not just settle it all then? Or do we have to, I don't know.
I think they have the
Seems
right
like
to
we're
get some
getting-
of the money. I mean, if we should give them something. You know, if we're going to look at the difference between 77,841 and 172,841,
Right.
then we should, if that's what the council's desire was, that we should at least return to them
Right.
everything but 172,841. That's
Is that the purpose of what we're trying to discuss?
Yeah.
What we want to give back to them right now? Is
Yes.
it?
Karen.
Yeah, have no problem with giving them the money based on their account balances as of June 30th that they provided for us. But I have a real problem giving them back, in addition to that, money for purchases of vehicles that they're telling us now. First of all, I guess, we went through a whole court case all about paving of road miles and everything else. And now all of a sudden it's, well, we're also throwing vehicles into an operating budget, which, as far as I'm concerned, is not acceptable from an accounting standpoint, but that's neither here nor there. But it's very convenient when you have this, you close out your year and you have all this pot of unexpended money, and now suddenly, oh, well, the reason we had so much left over is because we were going to buy 2 vehicles, and if you add those together, it's basically accounts for a large part of that. I don't buy it. I'm sorry. And for audited figures, I want to see their city audit report when they've closed their books officially, and at that point, we can decide, what, if any, additional money we may owe them. I don't have any problem with giving them what was determined at by the state during the hearing and everything, but I'm not inclined to give them any of the remaining surplus until we get more answers.
Okay. Harry?
That was well said, thank you. I agree with what Karen said. I guess my other question is if certain things are parts of public works, and are these vehicles all public works, or are they used for all different other kinds of functions in the town? I mean, we're by public, I mean, that's just a question that I would like to ask.
Well, I think that we should move this forward, whatever amount we think is appropriate, and then get back up for the committee, the regular meeting, when we vote in it final, and get whatever backup we want. Mark, you have any of that?
Well, I think, my understanding is, whether or not it's proper or not, when they submitted their budget a year and a half, 2 years ago, there was a request for 2 vehicles in it. These 2 vehicles that we're talking about. They intentionally did not purchase them because of the dispute with the town. And so I don't think there's anything, I mean, they don't have a vehicle replacement fund like we used to have. And so they have historically asked for funding to purchase vehicles on an annual basis as an operating expense. They may do something differently once they get the funding and put it into their equipment reserve account, but how they've asked for the money historically has been part of their operating budget request. So as far as I'm concerned, there's nothing going on there. These were 2 vehicles that they said they wanted to purchase in 2016, which it sounds like, based on what we heard last week, they intentionally did not do, pending the result of the arbitration. And I think, I forget how the mayor phrased it, but she did make a point that I think the extra money that the city provided for their own public works or highway department was less than what they were asking the town to provide, because they were trying to minimize as best as possible the impact on city taxpayers. So they didn't put the full dollar amount, as I understand it. I can try to get documentation for next week. I think it's up to the council how you want to proceed. If what you want to do is wait until January, until the final audited numbers are in, well, the final audited numbers are not going to account for these two vehicles because they weren't purchased in fiscal year 16. So that's not going to, the number may change. And I think what I really was looking for, Bruce, was Ron explained to us that there were some other adjustments, that the numbers that possibly we would have seen at the end of June were a little bit different. And those were the numbers that we wanted to get. I didn't sense at all they were markedly different, but to his credit, he did say they did come in a little bit different. And so the vehicles aren't, whether or not you wait until January or not, the vehicles weren't purchased in 2016. So there's still that issue of, do you feel comfortable or do you feel it's appropriate to be providing funding for vehicles that were in their budget, but they intentionally chose not to purchase because of this ongoing issue? I don't believe, they're not extra vehicles, they're not different vehicles than what was, and I can provide the documentation. We have all that.
Did you check that, Mark? Did you?
I
It sounds like you
didn't,
did.
but I can't for next Tuesday. Certainly bring that stuff with me. I didn't tonight. I apologize.
Great.
Yeah, if they were in their budget and they held that money back, I'm for
I'm fine too.
giving the money. That seems pretty straightforward.
Dean?
One thing that irks me, I guess I'm known for being irked, right, is in the arbitration, if that's what we want to call it, each side had a representative. I was for the town. The city had a professional that they hired, and he very ably made their case for them. And there was ample opportunity when I brought up, by the way, before the majority goes and awards the $830,000 back to the city, and I said, hold on, what about this figure that they haven't spent? That would have been a nice time for it to say, well, Deputy Commissioner, just so you know, the city didn't spend $123,000 and would have spent an awful lot of that on a couple of vehicles. We've just been waiting for this decision. And now that we know, don't go, let's have the majority opinion reflect that. Now, I don't have it in front of me, and I was not the author of that paragraph. But it's and in principle, I agree. We've allowed them to spend money on the vehicles, and we've paid for it in the past, and we can quarrel about that the next time. If in fact these were part of the budget, then I'm not sure what kind of argument we have. But it does irk me that they could have brought it up at the time, because now we're talking about this also in light of the award, not just as an internal accounting thing, but what does the award say? It's, are we looking for
We need a motion to move.
a number that's at least this much money kind of thing? Would that make us all comfortable?
I think we need to decide, we need to determine a number.
The minimum amount that's not in dispute, shall we say? I don't mean dispute, I mean pending the clearing up of these, the housekeeping and audited figures and all this sort of stuff. There's probably a minimum amount.
We withheld 800,000, right, Mark? Was it?
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
830.
It was about
Something
830.
like that.
Okay. So, one tact would be 830,000 minus the 77,841, which
Includes the vehicles.
that includes the vehicles. But I think that let me just get this first. 30. It would be $752,159. And I think that, I would be willing to support it pending that we get whatever documentation the council wants, we should have by the regular meeting to vote on it. I'd be willing to support it today, and assuming that we get whatever this council wants from the city should be made clear to them. And whatever questions people have should be, they can either send it over to us or be here for the regular meeting and answer those questions.
A second.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on that? So the motion is to return back to the city $752,159. That,
Yeah, I guess, since I did not bring any of that information,
Okay.
I think I'd almost work off of the 1.9 million, 1,957,631 minus what we've already given them.
okay, that works for me.
And we'll
Yeah,
bring all the documentation next week.
Yeah, but I'm sorry if I might, the 1.9 million, so they requested 1.9 million. We gave them 830,000 less than that. That's the whole 830. That's the spread between those two numbers. So the motion on the table is the 830, I think is what it was, minus what? You took us on the
well, I think to Mark's point is that it may be, 830 may not be the right number, is that right? That it's not exact.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So-
As the initial number, you're not suggesting that we adopt
Let us do the
that.
calculation
Right,
to
right.
get you to where I think you want to be, which is including the 95,000 for the vehicles,
Right.
but minus what they haven't spent on other items, the savings, or whatever you want to call it.
Everybody understand?
Yeah.
Okay.
I move that we amend the motion to include a qualification that we are paying this pursuant to the award. In other words, I need this to be, we would like this to be an independent event. I don't need this to color future considerations, which are all to be decided by us as we go.
Second?
Second.
A second? Then, before we vote, can you just explain the purpose of that again? So,
Well, the purpose of that is, there are many reasons why we might be voting to approve the appropriation. Want to make it clear, when we've all talked about it, but I want to make it clear for the record, we're making the appropriation pursuant to the award.
They were paying our bill.
It would pursuant to the award and for no other reason.
I get it. Okay, we have a amendment motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? That passes 7-0 to 0. Now pass, and we'll vote on the amended motion. Any discussion on that? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? That passes 7-0. And that brings us to the sister subject of the City Highway Budget Fiscal Year 2017 potential executive session. And at the meeting that we had with the mayor, she had sent us a letter. I think everybody had seen it. And she had said in the letter that, excuse me, that we'd like to propose that the key finding of the arbitration be applied as a resolution in the dispute over the 2017 budget. And so we felt we were, as we had said that we weren't sure that we were willing to make that concession, that what the, and Dean, you probably can explain this better than I can, but the arbitrator in the decision suggested looking hard and long at the comparisons between the city and the town and trying to take time and figure out why there's such a discrepancy and take that tact.
Right, but my understanding, the awards clearly does not say, this ends the issue once and for all. This is what you shall do from here on in. It dealt with 2016, and the majority encouraged both the town and the city to continue to work, and DOT would lend its good offices to this, to continue to work together to figure out why there's such a difference between the town and the city, and to et cetera, et cetera. So I don't see the award relating to 2016 as applying to 2017 or any further requests and appropriations, except to the extent that we're asked to continue to talk about it and to try to resolve our differences and get to the bottom of why the city is more expensive, pound for pound, if you will. So there's no principle that I see that's to be applied to 2017.
Right. And we did express that, and so we need to get a, what is it, Mark, a committee together, or?
Well, I think at the meeting, it was talked about, letting DOT know when we're available and going up to DOT and starting that discussion. I mean, DOT is so offered to provide some assistance. I don't know to what level that they, that they can do that, but I think we need to take them up on it.
Did they offer that assistance in the decision?
The decision.
Because I don't see it.
No, I don't.
It says the Department of
Well,
Transportation.
I will admit, when we were talking last week, it seemed like there was, it's not exactly how I recalled it in the initial letter. DOT was certainly offering to make themselves available to assist, but it seemed like the thought was, well, we need to go up and meet with DOT to get that process going. I don't think that was in the letter.
I don't think it was. I mean, it says the Department of Transportation would be inclined in the future to make demonstration of a good faith effort to initiate and execute such an analysis, a condition precedent for any future hearings, which to me said, if everybody makes an effort to do it, that's a good faith effort. It has nothing to do with DOT being involved. So I don't, Dean, do you ever recall DOT expressing a desire to be involved in how the city and town get together and?
Well, informally, I think they would rather that they not be called in the future, but that's what the special act dictates. No, I think the offer was made privately and also through the award. And it's a good faith offer to provide expertise to the extent the DOT has any expertise to lend to this. It could be just a simple matter of what does the DOT use for metrics. Who knows? It could be just the use of somebody as a facilitator outside the special act. And it could be that the two sides say, let's not go through a formal process. Maybe if we just meet with somebody to get over it. You can always go to mediation, small m, not capital M, so to speak. So I take it to be a rather broad offer to avail ourselves of whatever, if anything, that they have up in Weathersfield.
I mean, available time notwithstanding, I mean, would it help to get Tim and Gary together and they just, like, as an example, say, how do you paint your roads? We do this. We do this. How do you do a sewer? We have this many men do it. We have this many men do it.
I think we did that during the deliberations when we had the task force. We sat there and went over all those items in depth, and there wasn't any activity that we came up with that they didn't recognize as being done by either department. And what we were looking for is something that the city could put on the table and say, this is what we do in addition to what we talked about. And it's like the old, when I was down in Groton Long Point, I could have been sweeping the streets every day and getting an invoice for that, and that would have just kept the thing going. And you would have said, well, you're cleaning the streets a little bit more than you have to. Well, the sand gets on the streets from South Beach and so forth, and it has to be done. And maybe I'm doing it too much, more than I should, but I have invoices to prove that I've done it. And I think this is the argument that the city had used. They had invoices to prove that they did, or they had, that they did activities on the roads or the sidewalks or the drainage.
Except
Was it necessary?
If I might, that's where the discussion always seems to go, but the point was not Whether they have backup, that's an issue of trust. I'm not saying that they didn't spend the money they said that they spent. The issue was, are they doing things that the town doesn't? They would argue that the town is not the benchmark. But just because Groton doesn't sweep its streets, I'll make an argument, doesn't sweep its streets every month doesn't mean that they can't sweep the streets every month, and that isn't normal for a municipality like the city. But that's an argument you can make. Doing things that we're not doing, or doing them with a frequency that we don't engage in. The other question was, do we do the same things, and are they doing them more inefficiently? The case of the line striping, the epoxy paint versus the latex paint, and how often that's done. That's all that's about. I'm sure they've got invoices to back everything up, but in general, our contention has been that it's, as you know, that it's unwarranted, that the expenditures are unwarranted. And what the deputy commissioner was looking for was a link. If we say, for example, that they do X and that we don't do X, what's the price of that? What's the cost of that? She wanted to see the dollar amount. It wasn't sufficient to say, well, we have anecdotal evidence, and I think she says that in the award. We have anecdotal evidence of what's done and what's not done, and then we've got the various studies. We've got your task force, the 94 study, Dr. Hattery's study, and that's great, but she wasn't prepared to use that as a hard benchmark. So what she wanted was, identify something in their budget that you say is excess, but their budget isn't laid out that way. And frankly, our budget isn't laid out that way either. You're not going to see blowing the sidewalks clean in the spring kind of thing laid out in their budget directly. But I'd like to see those figures, and that's part of the award as well. She encouraged both sides to be prepared to turn over, to share records that back all that stuff up. And I think that's what your task force was also trying to get into as well. So,
That's it?
that's
Okay.
it. I didn't think I was going to add anything.
Getting back to what Mark was trying to say, you want to take advantage of an offer from the DOT.
Yeah, I think it's,
It's not clear to me what that is, but I don't want to lose sight of that, because it sounds like something that we maybe should be doing.
yeah, I'm not sure really what the offer is that DOT has made. I think the mayor's touched upon something that it may be being verbalized a little bit more than what's actually in the letter, but I don't see any downside to, a couple of us going up to DOT and having a discussion. All they can tell us is, oh no, we don't want to that's up to you guys to go find a consultant. I mean, even if that's all they could help us do is, identify 6 or 8 consultants to maybe call in, because I think that's what it's going to take. There's no harm in getting Tim and Gary together, but that's not going to resolve the issue. I think we need an outside. DOT's looking for us to bring somebody on board from the outside, I believe. But let's go have that discussion. I think we maybe both thought at the meeting that possibly the mayor maybe had additional discussions with folks in Newington than maybe we have had. Maybe not, but I don't, they certainly have access or have a lot more experience working with these types of consultants than we do. And the trick is going to be find somebody that both sides have a comfort level with. So I think what we tried to portray at the meeting was what was decided for 2016, we didn't think was going to be what should be used for 2017. The mayor, to her credit, was, time is of the essence. We're going to be putting together the 2018 budget, and, so we need to get moving. I mean, I think very much she would have liked to have had the 2016 solution be applied to 2017. Our sense was that was not going to be acceptable to the council, based on previous discussions and so forth. So I think we need to at least
Get something
make
going.
that offer,
Yep.
to go up to Newington or have them come down here and see what they can provide. And I think Gary should be involved in that. I think somebody from the council, the mayor or somebody else, or, should also be involved, Dean, in that discussion. So that if we're talking to somebody who wasn't involved in the arbitration process, that there's at least some knowledge of what went on at the arbitration, so that people can say, no, that isn't apparently what the commissioner was looking for. So we're not wasting another 2 or 3 months pushing the wrong string uphill here.
Greg, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was just going to try to move it in a different direction, talk about going forward to resolve the 2017 vice, talking about the past. But I agree, let's get the city and the town together and go explore.
Let's keep that moving.
I mean, otherwise, we'll be in the same boat.
Okay.
It's not just, because it's not just important for 2017, it's important for this upcoming budget.
Yeah. So next is 2016. Oh,
There's, the last paragraph of Marion's letter talks about getting together for the 2018 budget.
and we said to her that we should get together for the 2017, and that can dictate what happens for 2018.
Well, she may, I'm sorry,
No,
she may
she's
be raising
talking
it as really more part of that process that we sometimes go through about getting the two councils together ahead of time before they start preparing the 18, but I think there is some value in doing that.
This speaks to the statute and what we're supposed to do, which we do or don't do
Maybe
sometimes.
try to do that, first or second Tuesday in January.
Yeah, that's right.
But wouldn't it be ideal to do 17 and this in parallel?
Absolutely, but I
mean,
think it's not going to be done in January.
I'm not saying done, but at least try to start the process, try to have that person that we've identified that might sit down with us be part of the 2018 discussion.
I think that the point is that by charter, we have to sit down earlier rather than later for 2018.
No, I get it, I'm all for it. I'm just thinking, if we can identify the other person that's going to help us out or other people, it might be good to have them part of that process too.
So we can have them run parallel and hopefully cross.
Cross the streams.
Hopefully get a good solution.
Yeah. 2016-0204, review of town services and operations.
I just didn't want these next two items to get lost. That's why I put them on the agenda. We are well into the budget preparation stage at staff level, it's the only reason I put it on there is to let you know that, and if there was some input or suggestions that folks have, the sooner you can let me know, the sooner we can try to incorporate them. The review of town services, that was, all the departments had put together a memo about what they do. And the next item was really just the budget discussion. You have met with the RTM, you did have a discussion with the Board of Ed.
So with regards to the meeting with the RTM, just trying to find some notes I had. There was a number of things that came out of that aren't necessarily departmentally, touch departments, but will touch the process that we get into with regards to the budget and the calendar, and trying to coordinate the calendar with the RTM and the committees. So I know that's a really convoluted process, and just between our calendars. So, I think the realization, or make sure that Mark and Nikki are on board with trying to figure out the committees from the RTM, and at least getting the calendar out so they can have a once-over when we do it.
Yeah, it may not be perfect, but maybe
Yeah.
at least you strive to hit a few of them. Might help them.
For me, another one would be to get an idea of, like to have maybe put it on the agenda of a future COW, the computer fund and the vehicle fund, and have a discussion about them, and invite the finance committee or whoever else from the RTM wants to hear it, so that we can have a discussion about these funds and how we're going to approach them before the budget book is made, so that, and the other one that we talked about was the CIPs, and Mark was talking about in the copy from the notes, that maybe we have a separate meeting, an off-time meeting, maybe we can add that to it as well. I mean, yeah, Greg.
No, go ahead. Finish.
I was just going to say that, if we knew that the revenues from the state I understand, but if we knew the revenues from the state are gonna, you know, equate out to last year's, we wouldn't really have as big of a challenge with the budget, you know, with trying to keep it within a 0 or a 1 or 2%. We'd have a more realistic end game. And we're gonna move forward with, there's no need to tell Mark that you need to have a 5% reduction if Board of Ed comes in at 0 and the revenues are there. It's that unknown. So we can look at the budget and come in at whatever it may be, a 1 or 2%. But it's the revenues that are compromising, how we approach the budget. So it's very, to me, it's such an unknown that I don't know how you'd almost have to have a what-if scenario. What if we're 3 million under? What if we 5 million less in revenues? What does that look like on the town side? What does that look like on the Board of Ed side? Yeah.
Do we know what the reval's done yet? What percentage went up, what percentage went down in the
Not
town?
at this point. The reval won't be finalized until probably the middle to end of January.
Okay.
And then there's the Board of Assessment Appeal.
Yep.
So it's really almost March before you really know.
Dean?
Well, this will bear repeating as often as possible because it's a reval year. People famously will compare mill rates from one year to the next. Just want to make sure that when people do that they weight them correctly. And it's going to be a little bit of a bear because you're going to need the grand list figures. But whatever anybody does, please do not compare the fiscal year ending 2017 mill rate with its fiscal year ending 2018 mill rate, because they're going to be based off of very different grand lists. So it'll literally be one type of apple versus another type of apple, and it just doesn't work. I keep saying that over and over again until it sinks in, because I know somebody's going to come out there and say, there's been an increase in the mill rate. No, well, not really. I would just look at the bottom line tax figure. That's what I'm driving at.
Two things you wrote down here. One about identifying a meeting date for CIP discussion, and two, potential executive session for some issues. I don't know if those are on the docket.
Yeah, the CIP and the Planning Commission is reviewing the CIP this evening. We were for next year at around 5.6 million. Just as a reminder, last year we approved around $700,000 in CIPs. We've gone through it. That number's been reduced to around 3.5 million. I'm sure it's going to get reduced further. But that was one of the takeaways from the RTM meeting that I got was, okay, let's maybe try something different, and we'll have a couple-hour discussion with the council on CIPs, and we can probably do that in July sometime. I'm sorry, January. And then some of the other items really deal with some personnel items that I'd like to have a discussion with the council on at some point in the near future, in terms of some reorganizations and things like that.
Do we want to set a non-meeting night to discuss those things, like you recommended, or?
That would be fantastic.
Because January's pretty close.
Well, we now have that third Tuesday in January that's going begging. If we could do it sooner than that would be great.
Yeah.
But I think in order, the CIP, there's a lot of moving parts. The Planning Commission graciously makes a special meeting every year for me to attend. Unfortunately, this year we also had a council meeting the same night, so I could only do it for a half hour. But it's a couple-hour discussion easily, and I doubt that you're going to...
Planning knows the meeting schedule, right?
I'm sorry?
They know the meeting schedule, right? Tuesday?
Yeah, well, I think they had a difficult time getting everybody corralled on maybe a different date, so...
Well, you want to choose a date now for January and see if it works for the majority of us? Sure. I would say
Take that Tuesday back.
we could take the Tuesday back. We could go for like a Monday, like maybe January 9th. I'm fine with taking the Tuesday back. It sounded like Mark wanted to do it a little bit sooner if possible.
It's up to you. I mean, the CIPs are one of the last things that really get factored into the budget.
And when do they
but
do into the budget?
The sooner we, I mean, our desire constantly is to try to get the CIP portion done earlier, so we're not playing with that while we're also trying to finish up budget, department budgets. But whatever, you know, if you want to go with the third Tuesday, that's fine. If there's another date in January, you know, a Monday, a Wednesday, a Thursday.
I was looking at Monday the 9th. Anybody?
I have a board meeting that night.
You do?
But, yeah.
Okay. So that's no good. We could do, the first week I don't think is good. How about Thursday the 12th?
I'm sure that's probably fine with me.
Well, you know, if we're looking at it, we might as well go to the third Tuesday. Like, it's
Used to
Third
it.
Tuesday.
is the 17th.
My truck knows the way every Tuesday.
There you go.
That's a holiday.
We'll probably show up anyway, right?
The 16th is a holiday.
I'm sorry, Greg.
Yeah.
Said we'll probably show up anyway.
Yeah, third Tuesday.
Where is everybody?
17th, we'll go for the third Tuesday. And Mark will invite the RTM, whoever wants to let them know that it's going on.
For the CIP?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
If you want.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's the appropriate thing to do.
Is this a special cow?
Yes. Right, special time?
Yes.
Yeah.
The other thing, if you know, I certainly picked up on the whole discussion on trying to have joint meetings. I mean, I think it's going to be a Herculean effort to find dates that work for everybody. It's tough enough doing it for the 10 of us, let alone, you know, the RTM. But if we're going to try that, I'm going to ask Nikki to kind of reach out to all of you in the next couple of days about your availability, starting towards the end of March through April. So dust off your new calendars, because, you know, we basically, the manager's office sets up the meetings for budget review for the council. The clerk's office does the RTM. So we got to give, I think we need to give something to the clerk in terms of
Sure.
people's availability.
One of the things that I think came out of the meeting also was trying to have all the police on the same day, so that when you know, the public safety they're coming as a committee, they can hopefully, and I think it kind of would be interesting to look at city police, town police, and Groton Long Point police on the same day. Same thing with Public Works, but I'm just one guy. So, but that was a request that was made at that joint meeting.
That leads to my question about the dispatching and what happened there.
Well, we can put that on the agenda to
I
talk
keep
about.
asking about it.
Yep, we met last Thursday.
Yep.
So, we definitely do that. Mark, did you want to go into executive session tonight?
On the town manager's evaluation?
No, on the
Budget.
on the movement of.
No, that's okay.
Okay. Are we done with this item then? Okay. So the last one is town manager of annual evaluation, potential executive session. Oh, yeah. Why don't you do that?
Before you get to that, just one second.
Yeah.
Did we kind of skipped over town services and operations? I think Mark just mentioned it. Did we
Okay.
decide something on that, or?
No, we did not. We did not.
So we're just gonna let that,
I'm open to discuss, we're open to,
I think we put that on there for, I guess, a reason. I think Dean brought that up.
Yeah, I've talked enough tonight.
what does that mean?
What? That's just what I said.
Well,
You don't want to hear any more of me, come on.
we do. It's your time.
Your comic relief.
Well, do we want to pick how about if we pick a department and start down a path? Discussing town services. I think
Okay.
that was the whole flavor of the discussion, to start talking about it before the budget
Oh,
comes.
well, then I will start with something. I will start with something. Sunday night, really Monday morning, and this, you hear this gripe for decades. People are always complaining, why is the town plowing the street when it doesn't need to be plowed? There was a lot of motorized activity in my little neighborhood, and I'm looking out the window. I can't sleep because I have a bad cold. It's better now, thank you. But I'm looking out the window, and sure enough, town of Groton's doing its duty. I'm thinking, I hope they're just sanding. Nope, blades down. Blades down. What are they plowing? The little snow shadows. I figured, okay, the guy will make a pass, make another 3 passes, I think. And of course, Monday morning, it's raining cats and dogs. And I think it leaves me wondering, it leaves everybody wondering, just as a layman, why does the town plow roads when they don't need to be plowed? I'm sure there's a rationale for it. It's a guess. You don't know what the morning's gonna look like. I can't imagine Gary, for example, will want to blow through the snow budget this early in the season just by saying, some people need Christmas money, let them go out. But what I would like to know, and Mark, you don't have to have the answer at this moment. I realize you're the top of the pyramid. But how is this done? How does it happen that you see trucks out, not just sanding, but plowing, when there's nothing to be plowed?
Can I put my 2 cents in?
Yeah, go right ahead.
I was sanded. I was not plowed that night.
Okay.
And I'm appreciative because I happen to be one of the people that leaves for work at 2:20 a.m.
You're in a steep neighborhood.
And I had a safe ride to work at that point, so I think it was a necessity to have those plows out, and, well, the sanding out.
Okay.
But we did not get plowed. We just got sanded, so
Yeah.
I don't know.
I got sanded.
We just got sanded.
We got nothing.
I got a rock. Yeah, Greg?
Can I make a motion that we start with Public Works?
Sure.
Yes.
I mean, or else let's just delete it from the
Yeah,
calendar.
so what you're looking to do, Greg, is we're looking to have Public Works come in, and we want to pick it apart.
Yeah.
We want to understand.
Talk about it, yeah.
Okay. So we'll make Public Works the first department and put them on the next available Cal meeting,
The hot seat.
and we'll have a discussion about Public Works. Thank you, Greg, for pushing.
Sure.
So, do you want to suspend?
Yeah, I'm
the
going to
rules?
move we suspend the rules to consider something that is not on our agenda, and that is the purchase of this document that our town historian, Jim Streeter, has brought to all of our attention via email. I got a call from him, too. But evidently, I printed it out. I mean, that's what it looks like, but that's not what it is. I mean, but I guess it's kind of like, I called it in an email, kind of Groton's Declaration of Independence, so.
Should we vote to suspend the rules?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm saying too much. To consider purchasing, I think the number I saw was $22.50 or something like that.
25.
My motion is to suspend the rules and consider that.
Second.
So we have a motion to suspend the rules and a second to discuss the, hold on one second, the potential purchase of a historic document relative to Groton.
Right.
Any discussion?
Thank you.
Greg, do you want to discuss?
Yes. I would just recommend, we don't openly talk about necessarily money because we think we're going to bid on this thing. So I think we should try to talk about the flavor of it.
General terms?
General terms.
Okay.
Not that we think it's worth $1 million.
Well, if that's the case, should we go into executive session?
I don't think there's a need to.
No, I think just talk in general.
Okay.
All those in favor of suspending the rules, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? That passes 7 to 0 to 0. Go ahead, Harry.
Well, I mean, our town historian has brought this document to our attention. It's where Groton became Groton in 1705, and I don't know, does anybody remember who actually wrote? There was a state document, is that not right? Do you remember, Dean?
I don't remember. I wasn't.
Weren't you on the council then?
I was on the council in 2005 during our tercentennial. But I guess this document is like, it's the original document that says Groton is Groton and not part of New London anymore. And our town historian has brought it to our attention that it is for sale, bid, I suppose. I did see an email where there was an offer of a 10% break from the price, because Jim asked for that in an email, but I told Jim I'd bring it up, we suspended the rules to talk about it. I, for one, would support purchasing. I think it's an important document for the town to have.
Greg?
Yeah, I did talk to Jim. He said it's actually a manuscript of the original document.
Right.
Someone actually copied it from the original document back
Okay.
in 1705.
Okay.
Diane and then Dean.
I think it's important to get to. I just would like to go a different route as just to buy it. I think maybe we should do a fundraiser, or as Jim said, maybe a 50-50, something like that. But I do believe it's an important document for the history of Groton for us to get.
Dean? And then Karen?
Yeah, it's not uncommon for those documents. I mean, an original is great, but like, for example, the Declaration of Independence, it had to be copied. And the copies, the contemporaneous copies, were certainly valuable, the valuable documents to have. I believe, right, so Groton splits off from New London in 1705, and it's a process, probably a very brief process in those days, and this documents that. I'm not surprised that it's a copy. Is the representation that it's a copy made at that time? For example, one copy for us, one copy for you kind of thing? Something for the records? Is this a document that would have been lost when the Avery House burned down? You know, why doesn't Groton already have this document, or a copy of this document that's a founding document? But is it a copy made then? Is it a transcript made 100 years later? Does it lessen the value of the document in any way?
I tried to check that. I couldn't determine whether it was an early copy or a recent copy.
Yeah.
But the owner of the document is in Connecticut here. And I think that Jim asked some questions about, you know, the authenticity of it, and if it's been verified in any way, that would help. But I think it's a good document. I made a copy of it like Harry did, yeah.
Yeah, we're not talking fantastic sums, so I agree.
Karen?
Yeah, I totally support, getting this document. I understand Diane's position on a fundraiser. I don't think because this document is going to public auction, I think time is of the essence. And I think if you're going to try to do a fundraiser, somebody then has to be willing to put whatever the purchase price is. They've got to be willing to pay that up front.
And then us do the fundraising.
And then, then undertake the fundraising later to reimburse that individual. And I don't know, depending on how much the document is going for, if there's anyone. I don't think we can very well expect our town historian to do that.
Greg?
Yeah, he explained, like, I assume that the manuscript was copied in 1705, but that's something we should, like you said, validate the date. And I do think it's an important document, but we should try to understand what it's worth. And I do agree with Karen. Someone's probably going to have to go out on a limb, and we have to come to a consensus on what our support is for it.
I just wonder if there's a copy of that in the New London Town Hall. They should have it.
Yeah.
The original.
Reach out and find out. I think, I support getting the document. I think that from a budgetary standpoint, Mark, I understand that I was looking, it was my thought to talk to the library and talk to, I'm sorry, I can't remember her name.
Betty Ann?
I'm sorry?
Betty Ann.
Yeah, Betty Ann, I'm sorry. And I know that their budget was cut this past year and they had to potentially close on Sunday. But I'm wondering if in one of their budget, like, I don't know if it's operating or what, if there's money to buy things like.
Documents, yeah.
Well, I'm not sure there's documents, but I mean, I'm just wondering if it's potentially, since it's going to be housed at the library, Jim's donating his collection, it's going to the library and going to be there, that we couldn't argue that it's, to find a place, and if it isn't, to transfer the money out of contingency to the library to buy it for the town. That's my thought, but Just gonna, hopefully it's gonna eventually be on display and be available for people to see. Great.
Yeah, and I believe Jim has bought things in the past, and that's going to be part of what he's donating to the library. So he's got our best interest in mind looking at this document. So certainly support that because he's donating a lot of stuff that's important to Groton.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Jim said if push came to shove, he would split it, but I don't see any reason why the town shouldn't pay the $2,200 or whatever it is. So, I would support it.
Do we need a motion for this kind of thing, Mark, or?
Whatever, I'm not sure, and what I'm hearing is there's interest in acquiring it, but I'm hearing a couple different ways of potentially doing it, so, is there interest in doing a fundraiser? I'm not sure this is an auction per se.
It's not.
More of an
I
eBay.
think whoever shows up.
Item for sale.
Yeah. So it gets to the point, if we're going to do a fundraiser, you probably do need somebody who's willing to
Step up.
up front and acquire.
Right.
I know this is kind of silly, but I don't know I know we have a lot of different historical things. Maybe we can trade the guy. I mean, if he deals in historic documents, maybe there's something we have flying around that he might want, But,
That's an interesting thought.
no, I mean, it's like baseball cards.
He's been on the council since 1705.
Probably his handwriting on that.
Maybe Bruce's suggestion of taking money from contingency, putting into the library, making this property the library and this historic collection is the way to go.
I would support that.
So, do you need a money number on that, Mark?
Whatever.
Because it sounds like it's a bid kind of thing or whatever, but
Why don't you pass a resolution or a motion, or ask for a motion to that effect, and I will confirm a number with Jim Streeter, and we'll include that in the motion for next week.
I didn't hear exactly what you said.
that money be taken from contingency, put into the library make the purchase, and it's part of that collection that Jim Streeter is donating to the town.
My only problem with that is everybody has an agenda, and you might open a door for other people saying, well, I want to get this with the town, or I want money for this to do in the town.
These things happen all the time. We dealt with high school football rings one year here. That was, these kind of things come up all the time. That's my motion then, and Mark to put the number in.
So you want it supplemental appropriate to the library, or you just want to put it in legislative, and that's where, I think.
What makes the most sense to you, Mark?
That doesn't matter to me. I just want to make sure I understand. I mean, if the town's going to buy it, I don't know that you need to put the money in somebody's department.
I'll take it, but then just a supplemental and just buy it.
I think if you put it in legislative, it shows.
That's fine.
And then you can have a discussion where you think this thing should be displayed at some point in the future, or whatever we're going to do with it. I'm sure Jim has some ideas. I'm not sure it's something you necessarily want to hang up on a wall.
Well, lighting issues.
I have a lot of trust in our town historian, and he knows what he's doing, and he wouldn't have brought this up if it was not important enough to do it, so I'm going with Jim's judgment here too, so. That's my motion then, to take it, just take it.
Second.
Okay.
So we have a motion and a second to acquire the document and do it through legislative account. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? That passes 7-0-0. Okay. Now we're back to the regular meeting. And the last is the town manager annual evaluation potential executive session. So I believe we'll be going into executive session for the purpose of Mark to provide feedback on our previous discussions concerning his, July 1st, 2016 evaluation is to include the town manager.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? That passes 7-0-0.